Hey, welcome everybody to Life's New Normal podcast, where another day of learning awakes us all. My name is John Register, and I have the honor of being your host and introducing you to amazing individuals who have amputated their fear and embraced a new normal mindset. Now, we all know that hard times are going to come in our lives, and how we respond to those times is really a direct reflection of our character. As I always say, our character can be defined as who we are when no one's watching. Our character can also be defined as what we stand for when everyone is watching. And our character is revealed, that comes to life during our times of testing. Now, my guests have been tested. They've been battle scarred. They have lived through the tough times in life. And now they're willing to give back to us. So let's meet our guest for today. Have you ever seen the United States Air Force Air Demonstration Squadron in action? Well, you may know them better as the Thunderbirds. Well, my guest is the first female pilot to fly as part of the Air Demonstration Squadron for the Air Force. So please welcome to Life's New Normal podcast, my guest, Colonel retired Nicole Malachowski. Thank you so much for being on.
It's a joy to be here. Thanks for having me, John.
What was it about fighter pilot or flying or flight that made you join the Air Force?
You know, it's interesting. I can distinctly remember when I made the decision, to follow that path and to follow that dream. I was 5 years old. My family went to an air show, John, and this plane came screaming by low across the runway. It was called the F-4 Phantom, which you probably know was the workhorse of the Vietnam War. And when it came by, I mean, it rumbled my chest. I had to cover my ears. I could smell the jet fuel. And I started like shaking with excitement, like a little kid does, right? I mean, I was 5 years old. I was just overwhelmed my senses, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do someday.
So you're in the military, you're in the Air Force, and you get a chance to do this, but your dream, it looks like, almost stops because of weight restrictions. What was going on at that point in time?
Yeah, sure. There was a lot of concern. They had just lifted the ban, or the congressional law that prevented women from flying fighter aircraft. And when they finally did that, I was certainly excited and rejoicing. And then they quickly realized, wow, we haven't actually designed these aircraft, we haven't designed sitting height or ejection seat capabilities to match the typical female frame. So I literally am the minimum height, 5'4", in order to be a fighter pilot. And I remember, as I was coming up on my qualifications, true story, at the Air Force Academy to try to qualify min height, be open to fighters, I would hang upside down on a pull-up bar in order to try to gain, a little bit. And I remember the day the Air Force did my official measurement, I was 5'4.25". So I'm a quarter of an inch too tall, John. I'm glad to say that we've come a long way integrating women into fighter aircraft, and it's now something that aircraft designers and engineers think about as they're designing the next generation of aircraft and space vehicles and all these fun things women will be a part of.
What do you think the gained advantage is today versus what was then in the past by just opening up to various demographics for flight?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, we're casting the net a lot wider, right? To take in all of the unique skills and backgrounds of all of the Americans who are out there trying to volunteer, to serve their country. And women have always been a part of military service, as you know, since the Revolutionary War. I tell people a lot, women can love their country too. And some of us choose to show that by wearing our nation's uniform. So we are bringing a diverse and unique skill set. I mean, plenty of articles have now been written on the importance of making sure that you don't just have diversity of categories, right?
Right.
That's very short kind of thinking. If we say there's a certain percentage of gender, race, or ethnicity, we've moved beyond that. What are the cognitive skills that somebody brings, the leadership skills, what type of background, from where and how they were raised? It just makes for a richer tapestry in our military. And our military has to represent the fabric of America. It has to.
Yeah, I remember speaking in the Big Blue Sleep. I'm sure you had that down in Alabama.
And
you've been there, you slept through that one.
Uh-huh.
In the captain's course, I was actually one of the speakers, and I found it fascinating that we talk about the categories. You talk about the categories of diversity, and you want it really, not really categories, but of thought and of leadership and all the other things that come with it. And yet we saw a really drop off. I'm talking about African Americans now, from the Tuskegee Airmen, who are arguably, talk about the tip of the spear. The pilot's fighter pilot, right? It's
Indeed.
we talk about the greatest generation. They were the greatest of the greatest generation. And then coming back from war, didn't really have the welcoming home of the freedoms that they enjoyed overseas rather than back in the United States. And I often think about that, whereas with women, the 19th Amendment, we've opened up, now we got voting rights. And the same thing with
it's the 100th anniversary of the 19th
anniversary,
Amendment.
right? Absolutely. And I think about that and how much is actually lost because we don't think about including people into the conversation.
Think about crisis right now, what we're going through, our whole country and companies and organizations. Crisis is like the mother of innovation. Crisis forces you, right, to look for new solutions and stuff. Think about how World War II might have turned out had we not had the Tuskegee Airmen, had we not included the women Air Force service pilots.
Right.
Prior to this major global crisis of World War II, we would leave our African American, talent on the bench. We would leave our American women, that talent on the bench. And then all of a sudden, World War II, you look around, you're like, dang, all right, guys and gals, come on in. And you're thinking to yourself, how would our military have performed in World War II? How would have that turned out if we had women and African Americans integrated much sooner? Ask yourself, what can I do coming out of this crisis, right? So I'm not waiting next time.
We talk about, I talk about a lot with Dr. Harry Edwards. He's a sociologist out of Cal Berkeley and did a lot in the space. And I was talking about disability. I was really focused in on that. And he said there were three things that were really imperatives to have in place. And the first thing is a dependable and developed pipeline of talent. The second thing is a persistent and a pervasive demand. And then third is that the organization or entity that's being impressed upon to change actually has to want to change. How was that experience for you, kind of going through the first time leading, and what pressures did you feel on you for that in that experience?
People say, you must have felt a lot of pressure, and maybe that was the team hard on you, or were people hard on you? And the fact was, not really. I think people were tickled, right, to see a woman out there flying. My team was very supportive. The only pressure I felt was the pressure I put on myself. I was distinctly aware that if I messed this up, quote unquote, messed it up somehow, that it would be a long time probably before another woman was quote unquote allowed, right, in order to do this. So I was very focused on doing my job in a way that I opened the door, but that I opened the door in a way that it stayed open.
I find that not only admirable, I think it's a kind of Jackie Robinson-ish, making it possible for folks that come after. But I think it's also, and one of the things I try to talk about is legacy. And oftentimes we don't look at the legacy of the jobs that we might be in or the family environment that we might be in to say, okay, at the end of it, how am I going to leave a better opportunity for the people who are coming across? There's a great poem called The Bridge Builder by William Drumgoole that talks about a person who builds a bridge for the next generation. And that's really, I think, when we think about business, or we're thinking about even in this coronavirus environment, what legacies are we trying to leave for our children to understand this as they're going through, and making sure that they know how to show up and operate when another crisis comes on down the road in their life. And I want to switch gears a little bit, because we're in the Air Force, but then because of your greatness, you become a White House Fellow.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the White House Fellowship, for the listeners, it's the President's Leadership Program, and it is actually pretty darn cool and pretty darn elite. And I recommend it to anybody. I learned a valuable lesson. One, always go where you're wanted. When I interviewed with them, they were excited. They had ideas. They had plans for me. They wanted me, even though it wasn't, if quote unquote, the sexy placement or the cool sounding, government organization. But the second thing is I was pretty smart. I knew that the GSA was in charge of the presidential transition. I have always been impressed with public service and the people that go into it, the civilians. I don't think the military has some kind of monopoly, right, on what selfless service to your country looks like. I have been impressed time and again by those public servants, whether they're political appointees or they're, career civil servants, it doesn't matter. By and large, the vast majority are extraordinary, patriotic Americans who work very hard. I learned a lot about improving my communication and being a lot more deliberate about how I said things as a leader, as much as what I said as a leader. Watching someone like Barack Obama up close, in one of his staff meetings or something, or any of the high level people that were working there, it wasn't so much always the content as much as the way they delivered it, their body language, their tone, the amount of energy or type of energy, and how much that could move a room. I don't think I was ever as cognizant of that in myself. And that became very helpful when you move yourself into a command or a leadership position in the military.
Do you still call on some of those individuals for, some jams and things that you might be in to just kind of just talk things through?
100%.
No.
I think I am more in contact more regularly with the folks from the White House Fellowship because of their diversity of thought than I am maybe with a lot of my military people. I hope that doesn't sound bad.
No.
I'm also in a different place in my life, right? I've moved into corporate America. So I'm learning a lot from them because I'm in a new environment. I found myself working hard as a patient advocate. And so leaning on some of their professional network is also very selfishly, right? Very helpful. I hope that I reciprocate, of course, to them.
Can you share with our audience about the tick disease or whatever?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for the opportunity to do that,
Sure.
because this brings my life a lot of meaning and joy to share and to raise education and awareness. So my military career actually ended very unceremoniously, unexpectedly, and much against my my will or desires. I was medically retired just over 2 years ago after serving more than 21 years. In fact, at the time that I fell severely ill, I was, basically a military aide to Michelle Obama. My point being, my life and my career were going great, and on a dime, in an instant. I had started getting sick actually in the summer of 2012 when I was the commander of the 333rd Fighter Squadron. I felt like I had the summer flu. I knew I couldn't safely fly planes. I thought it was a virus, it would pass. It didn't. At the same time, I discovered a rash on my right hip. When I went to the doctor, they decided it was probably a spider bite and maybe I just needed to rest. So they gave me some ointment and some couple days of antibiotics. So unfortunately, due to a lack of education awareness on my medical providers, as well as my part as a patient, I went misdiagnosed. Within 3 months of that rash and the beginning of my illness, I started having neurological problems. So a lot of numbness, pins and needles. I started having problems reading and writing, coordination problems. I couldn't carry things with my right hand, tripping over my right leg. And then I started having speech problems. This would start a 4-year odyssey of me seeing a heck of a lot of doctors, a lot of invasive and unnecessary testing. In August of 2016, so fast forward 4 years of struggling with waxing and waning neurological symptoms, and doctors saying, we have no idea what's wrong with you. In fact, doctors suggested many times, we think it's in your head. I was told, quote, you're a very successful woman in a male-dominated career field. Maybe it's time for you to retire, end quote.
Wow.
And it was all in my head. It was a bacterial infection. So technically they were correct. They just didn't know why. In August of 2016, I woke up and I had temporary paralysis. I couldn't open my mouth or move because the infection, which had been ravaging my body for 4 years, had made it to my brainstem. My career was gone in the blink of a bite, as I like to say. I'm the survivor of late stage neurological tick-borne illness. So a tick bite completely, right, ended my career, nearly killed me, broke me to the lowest I've ever been, and changed my life forever. But I'd say changed my life forever for the better. I absolutely love being a patient advocate now. I'm on several government boards, academic boards, and nonprofit boards as a patient advocate. My story has been shared with Congress. Nothing brings me more honor, I think, than that. I laid in bed for 9 months, pretty much unable to talk normally. I couldn't walk. I was bedridden 22 plus hours a day. So people say to me, "Hey, Nicole, how'd you go from being a fighter pilot to a professional speaker?" And the answer, John, is I got 9 months worth of words saved up. So I got to get them out. All right. So I did some recovery for 9 months, another year of rehab, lost 2 years of my life. And it gave me the privilege of reinventing myself, which is how you are finding me today.
One of the whole title of the show is embracing life's new normal.
Hmm.
And I always say it because people, the term is out there so common now of the new normal, but it's used in a way that is its destination. So when we get to the new normal, or it's already the new normal, or when we get back to normal, we hear that phrasing of
Hmm.
it or that definition of it. And for me, it's not. And so I always say it on the show is that the new is no prior point of reference. So we really don't want to live in our past. We want to bring that
Yes.
past forward. Right. And then the normal is the everyday typical occurrence of a thought or an action. So what are we doing every single day to push ourselves into creation mode?
Hmm.
And then when tough times come, when stress or challenges come, we're already in that mindset of creation. You're looking at life from a different lens, a different angle. How are you sharing that with your audiences to help
Yeah.
them through that process?
I wish your listeners could see my body language because as you were just talking, as you saw, I was just getting super excited because everything you said is just so resonates with me. And I just couldn't agree with more. One of my great joys today is I serve as an ambassador and a mentor with the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program. And I just taught a class on Monday on this very subject. And I like to call it Nicole's 3 R's: resilience, resurgence, and reinvention.
In the word resilience, as a hurdler, I broke the word down because I'm just mechanically do
Process?
that, right? And I looked at the word resilience. The word resilience has 10 letters. Those for me represent the 10 hurdles in a hurdle race. 400-meter hurdles or the 110-meter hurdles. And then the
Love it.
first R I talked about is the ritual. The ritual begins a rhythm. Rhythm elevates us to our rise. But
Mhm.
also inside the word resilience, the starter or the announcer will say before the race begins, quiet for the start. And embedded in the word resilience is the word silence. So we must hear our own voice. When you have that crucible experience first, that you need to take some time to process what is going on before you just jump off, because it's good that time of silence is going to come at some point where you need to
Yes.
begin to hear your voice. Um,
Wow. So, I had forced silence, physically forced silence. I was in my own head for 9 months as I had to work within my own brain to process the loss of my identity, the loss of my career, the loss of my income. What do I do next? And I remember having this pity party on the day of my retirement. I'm human, right? So I'm just admitting it. I can't read, I can't write, I can't work full time. Who's going to hire me? Blah, blah. And then as I sat there in silence, literally, these
mhm,
words came to me: yield to overcome.
mhm,
And yielding meant not quitting or giving up or surrendering,
right.
it meant full acceptance. And I realized, Nicole, you're not asking yourself the right question. It's not, what can't I do now because of my illness? It's what can you do now because of your illness? And once I yielded and took an honest assessment of my skills with my illness, which I still live with, I am a walking poster child for invisible illness. I still really can't read or write. I have a balance deficit and I have a pretty substantial autonomic nervous system problems from the brainstem damage. But it wasn't about what I can't do. It's like, with this amazing illness that has made me better, what can I do?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not been inspired by this Nicole, the Nicole, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. You need to
Thank you for
rewind the
having
tape,
me.
put the 8-track in. I'm going to date myself on that. But I mean, crucible experience, resilience, resurgence, reinvention. I love that model that you have there. What a great interview today. And that's going to do it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. I want to thank the people that made this show possible. Maria Howell for the introduction, Tim Kaufman for supplying us with the music, Morris Parsons for being the sound engineer, my amazing guests, Nicole Milachowski, and for offering us such great insights, and of course, all of you who continue to subscribe, who continue to listen, and who continue to share these podcasts and inspire the people around you. Visit my website, johnregister.com. We'll have it all over the place for you. It's on iTunes and be on Stitcher. It's all over the place. We have the book out there, 10 Power Stories to Impact Any Leader. That is out. It's on Amazon right now. We're going to journal our way to leadership success. It launches on May 17th live. I'm really nervous about that because my first venture on a book. And you are the inspiration. Remember that. You are the catalyst to motivation. Motivation then causes actions. Actions lead us to transformational results. And those results, they re-inspire us or allow other people who are watching the process to catch their own vision. You are helping people and helping others to amputate their fear and embrace their new normal mindset. Now I charge you to go forth and inspire your world. Go is your command. Forth, that is your direction. Inspire is your vocation. Because this mission belongs to you and you alone. World, this is your sphere of influence. So see you back here next time on Life's New Normal Podcast.